highlight. Okay, the second part of our framework is talking about your academic experience as more rigorous than that of your peer group. And these are really hardships or complexities that forced you to manage your time in a way that others in your peer group did not face. And again, quantify to the extent possible, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into specifics. So for instance, in school, if you had an above average extracurricular load or significant work experience while in school, definitely provide the hours per week that you were involved, and really only stress this area significantly if you were way above average relative to your peer group. Examples specifically could include things like if you started a business venture, talk about the background there, the lessons learned, how you spawned the idea, etc. If you work full-time or part-time significantly, say 20 plus hours per week, and again, that's that much more impressive when fewer of your colleagues were in that same situation. Or military service, if you completed that while in school, that's a significant responsibility as well, in addition to school. While in school, if you had a more challenging academic setting, you can frame that in one of the following ways, if true. If you graduated early, first of all, talk about that and elaborate why. Usually it's because you were either trying to pay back loans faster or you were afforded a great professional opportunity. If you had a double major, which by definition meant that you had a heavier academic workload in terms of average number of credits per term, and if you had a major that was considered among the hardest at your school. Be careful with that last example though. Admission committees already take into account to an extent what your major was, and they know, for example, that engineering is a demanding major at most schools. When you describe these circumstances that we've talked about so far in the first two parts of our framework, you do not want to come off as though you're complaining about your situation. Instead, you want to try to frame it in a factual, sort of positive way with the lesson of, hey, this is what I took away from this experience, and this is why it benefited me. So for example, if you had a lot of work experience in school, that might have improved your time management skills, for instance. So now in the first two parts of the framework, we've talked about a lot of ideas. How do you actually place these insights and implement them within your application itself? We believe that it's better to mention these inside your regular essays and CV instead of the optional essay for your application. The art, though, is to come off so that it's not forced into the story in your essays, but rather it's part more of a natural flow. Now, why do we say that you'd like to place them in your regular essays? Well, if you place it in the optional essay, it may appear that you're bringing excuses to the table when you don't want to actually do that. Mentioning the accomplishment that sort of belongs to the topic, so to speak, could actually have a bigger impact on the reader from the standpoint that it's easier for them to remember facts that are part of a coherent flow as opposed to something separate from the rest of the application. So how do you actually place these in the essay, whether it's in the regular or the optional essays? In the regular essays, if you're talking about, for example, your background as an applicant, you could say something to the effect of, my childhood shaped the way who I am today, and then somewhere in that essay talk about your high school distinction or SAT scores, if that was relevant and specific to you and your situation. Or if you're talking about your career progression, for example, you could say, one of the key decisions in my career in life was thinking about whether or not to pursue business or a law degree. My LSAT score placed me in the top 10% of students, but I ended up taking a job in the high-tech industry because of my interest in the company that offered me, for example. Within the optional essay, you don't want to just state whatever the contextual factors are. Instead, take a step back and give an introductory sentence like, I believe my GMAT does not accurately reflect my analytical skills, or I'd like to bring a few facts to the admission committee's attention that might help in evaluating these skills. And then you succinctly go and describe the facts. The longer, frankly, that it takes you to explain, the more that it may look like you're bringing excuses to the table. So try to do it in a succinct way. Okay, so the third part of our framework is our actions that you as an applicant can take prior to actually submitting your application itself. Thus far we've talked about things that are basically descriptive of your history. You really can't change them in the first two parts of our discussion. So this third part is really about being strategic in your planning, in how you select schools, and how you complete a well thought out application that will hopefully differentiate you. So some specific examples would include things like the following. First, completing and excelling in getting at least a B, if not hopefully an A, in a business-related course. This is going to somewhat improve the impression of the admission committee on your analytical skills, but it's not totally going to address a low GMAT score. This is particularly relevant if your GMAT quant score is weak, or if you had an undergraduate major that was in a non-technical field or non-quantitative field like the humanities, for example. Obviously, make sure that your grade is available when you apply to business schools, and take or consider taking a class in statistics, finance, or accounting, because these are all classes that you would take in the first year of an MBA program. And finally, try to take the class to the extent that you can at an accredited and prestigious school, or the most prestigious school that you can afford and have access to, where you